As an avid lover of audiobooks, March saw me surprisingly in my ebook era. I found a new favourite fantasy series, discovered a classic that I never knew I'd love, and managed to source almost all my books this month through the library. Hi, I'm Erin. Let's talk about everything I read in March and set up a tracking page for April too. I like to fill out my reading journal in a few sessions over the course of the month, so you might notice things changing like my jewellery and the table setup here. Let's start with some of the yearly tracking spreads, so I'm going to fill out my books read list here. This is literally just a list of the books that I read over the course of the year. I really like how straightforward and simple this page is to use, and I like that I don't have to print extra book covers or anything for it, although a book cover version of this spread would look really impressive, I think. Maybe next year's reading journal can have something like that. Most of the filling out and writing of reviews in this video is done with this beautiful little pen here. This is the Wren pen from Tom Studio. It's my favorite pen right now, and I have it just inked with the Tom Studio black ink, and it's working like a little dream for me. This first update of the reading journal throughout the month was done about mid-month, so I have lots of information to add in, but it wasn't the whole month's worth yet, so we'll come back to these pages later on and update things again. I'm adding Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins to the release radar. That one's actually out now, but at the time I was adding it, it wasn't yet. I have it ready in my Audible catalogue and I'm ready to go. I also just hadn't filled out my Maybe Next, which is what I like to call my TBR list. I have stacks of books from my previous journal that I need to transfer into here, but for now I've been keeping note of the books that you recommend to me in the video comments on my reading journal videos, so I'm adding those ones in first. I feel like I'm in a state at the moment where there is so much that I'm excited to read that it's a little bit overwhelming, but I'm always open to new suggestions, so don't forget to drop yours in the comments below if you have things that you think I would like. Onward to updating my March tracking page. This is a little calendar where I like to add the dates that I started and finished books. There are definitely days that I don't read, they're not that common, but it honestly doesn't bother me having a super accurate reflection of that on this calendar. Just date started and ended. Reading a book is completely fine for me. And I really like the visual representation of having this on a calendar, so that's my preferred way to do this. I've just picked out a bunch of blue markers that will work with the theme of this spread, and I'm using those to represent the lengths of the books. And you can always tell the date that I was setting this stuff up because that's the date that all of the book reading ends on. It was a bit of a mixed bag for me as far as genres this month. We've got literary fiction, we've got some Greek mythology, we've got fantasy, we've got romance. Honestly, nothing too outside the box for me, but I have never read a Greek mythology story before, so Elektra was quite different for me. We'll talk about that later on when we set up the review page for it, but first we've got to do a review page for the Page Mages Book Club book for March, which was 4 Seasons in Japan by Nick Bradley. Thank you to Crystal or Cloudwhip for choosing this one for us. In case you didn't know, the Page Mages is the name of my book club that I run through the channel membership program here on YouTube. There are 3 tiers that you can join the channel on, and the Page Mages is the top level of that and gets you access to my book club. All the action happens over in my Discord, which is only accessible to channel members. We have a suggestion box for people to suggest books they think might be a good fit, and we vote on the books each month, and then we read a book and have a little chat about it on a video call at the end of the month. I try to read the book a little bit early so that I can come up with some discussion questions ahead of time so people can think about them as they read the book if they want to, and I like to answer those discussion questions in my journal for myself and kind of use it as a tool to guide the discussion when we jump on the call. As you can probably tell from the title of the book, 4 Seasons in Japan is set in Japan, which means I can finally use some of the Japanese-themed stickers that I've been hoarding. These ones are from Sticky from various past advent calendars, I think. This book has the strangest format that I've come across. Apparently there are some other books out there like this, but this is the only one that I've read, where it's kind of a book within a book. So our main character, Flo, is an American woman living in Japan working as a translator, and she's in a time of crisis in her life and is throwing herself into her work in order to cope. She finds this paperback on a train and decides that's going to be her next project. She's going to translate this novel into English and try and market it to an English-speaking market. So most of the meat of this book is actually the translated novel from Japanese that you're reading as Flo translates it. I will mention there will be spoilers in the written reviews on the pages in this video, but I won't give you any spoilers in the voiceover, so just don't read what I'm writing if you don't want to know. So that book within a book experience is really strange. Obviously, we already know when we're reading fiction that we are relating and falling in love with and coming to care about people who don't really exist. But in this particular story, I found that I cared a lot more about the fictional characters than I did the only one layer of fictional characters, so that was really odd because as you were pulled back out of it and back into Flo's real world story, you would think, oh right, those people aren't real, but they weren't already. It was just your brain interpreting things. It's so strange. It was really surreal. Obviously, there is also a lot of Japanese culture enmeshed in this book, despite the fact that it is written by a British man. I believe he is also a fluent Japanese speaker and lives in Japan or has lived in Japan. And it also kind of functions like a mini holiday. You get to see quite a bit of Japanese small town life across the course of the seasons. So how perfect were these stickers for this book? I can't believe how well it worked out. We've already had our Page Majors call to discuss this book, and it was such an enjoyable discussion. It was so interesting. I think we all landed in a pretty similar place as far as enjoyment of the book. Using my Peach book rating system, which I have a video about explaining that in case you want to know more about that, it's linked in the description. But on the Peach rating system, I've given this one 3.6, which I'm pretty happy to round down to 3.5 stars. Onward to Elektra by Jennifer Saint. This was my first time reading any kind of adaptation of Greek mythology, so please forgive me if I pronounce any of the names wrong. I don't know what I'm doing. I've been trying out a book subscription service recently that curates a book for you month to month based on a form that you fill out telling it what you like and what you don't like. That subscription is getting its own video review in the future, but this was one of the books that was curated for me through that service. This one comes from 3 points of view through the eyes of 3 of the women involved in the events of the Trojan War. So you're seeing this book play out through the eyes of Clytemnestra, of Cassandra, and of Elektra, of course, because she's the name of the book. I had really mixed feelings about this one. I found it very engaging. The story was interesting. I don't know much about Greek mythology, so a lot of it was quite new to me. I also found it quite brutal. I really like it when characters have very redeeming qualities about them, and I don't feel like very many of these characters did. Lots of bad decisions made, and not a lot of remorse shown for making those bad decisions from anyone. Wild times. Of course, when you're talking mythology, the stories already exist, right? They're out there floating around, and maybe there are variations of them, but the stories are already set, so the authors can take different perspectives and look at things from different people's eyes and stuff like that, but the bones of the story remain the same, I guess. Don't come for me for this statement. It's kind of like fan fiction, where the characters already exist and people just put them into different situations. What I'm trying to say here, I guess, is that I don't think Jennifer Saint is at fault for it being like brutal and gruesome for me. Obviously, that's just how the stories play out. And I did find the book engaging and interesting, and I didn't have any trouble finishing it, but I don't know after this experience if Greek mythology is for me. I also didn't find the writing anything particularly engaging or special for me either, so I've given this one 16 out of 25 on the Peach rating scale system, which is 3.2 stars, so I'm giving it 3.25, I guess. Enjoyed, but nothing that's going to make me want to ever read it again, you know? I like to have all of my rating information over here on the overview page as well, so I'm just going to flip back and fill that out, and then we can move on to our next review. I owe you an apology for this one. I did not check that my files had finished transferring, and 2 of my files hadn't, and I didn't realize until I'd formatted the card, so I don't have the setup process for this one, but this next book is Quicksilver by Callie Hart, which has been on my list to read for a while now. It's a romantasy story, and I've heard so many people, or seen so many people online report that this is the first book since ACOTAR and Fourth Wing that has made them feel that feeling. I did not find that to be the case for me so much. I liked it. I definitely liked it, but I wasn't like frothing over Kingfisher, you know? But I did really like the lettering, so I copied it for my review spread. My understanding for this book, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it was indie published and has since been picked up for traditional publication. I can see that in the book, like the writing's actually very good. I think the writing's fine, but there are some things like some italicized things for emphasis that we really didn't need, and sometimes a character will shout in all caps and like you really don't need that. It's a very kind of a self-published or fanfiction-y kind of formatting choice. It did have some surprises, some twists towards the end that I didn't see coming, and I always love when that happens, but I am very much looking forward to seeing how book 2 is maybe a bit more polished because of those trad published perks, you know? But hey, I gave it 4 stars, which I think is pretty good, and it did have a song in there that reminded me of Lord of the Rings vibes, so that's pretty cute. That was the end of that journaling session, so we've now time traveled further through the month, and we've got some more books to add to those initial trackers at the beginning of the journal. So we're going to go back to some pages you've already seen, and if you're wondering what I'm using to log my reads and to keep track of my reading stats, it's an app called Storygraph, and this is not sponsored by them, but I do really like this app. If you're also a Storygraph user, my link to my profile is in the description, so we can be friends if you like. And I was also using Goodreads for a good long while there, but it's kind of redundant to update two book tracking apps at the same time, and I don't find that there are as many features within Goodreads, so I've stopped updating that, but it's still linked if you want to be friends there. I really don't check it very often. Occasionally to get like quotes from Kindle books and stuff, but I won't be checking it super often, just FYI. We have set our Page Majors book for the month of May. It's going to be The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. Thanks to Rachael for that suggestion, and our book for this month is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher, so if you're keen to join in, you can still get in on that action. And Nettle and Bone was suggested by Pam. Thank you, Pam! I'm adding a new series to my series tracker here. I read the first book in this series this month. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on, and also I'm adding What If I Never Get Over You, which is the next Page Tune book, which is coming out in April. It might already be out, actually, by the time you're watching this, which is wild. I haven't updated the book bingo in a while, so let's have a little look here. I have read a classic, which I thought was going to be one of my struggles for the year, and really wasn't. We'll set up a spread for Anne of Green Gables in a little bit too. I'm just using the same pens that I used to set up this whole theme originally, so it felt appropriate to colour in the square for Anne of Green Gables in green, of course. I've also got an LGBTQIA+ book there. I think I've read a couple this year, actually, so that could have been one of a few options, but I just went with the one that I read most recently. And for YA, actually this book is also an LGBTQIA+ book, but I figured, one per square, so we'll space them out. It occurred to me while I was doing this that I had read a book by a local author back in January. Fly Away was by an author based out of my city, in fact, very local. Big shout out to Kathleen Jennings, in case you, by some weird coincidence, find yourself watching this video at any point. Hi, fellow Brisbaneite. And look at that, thanks to Elektra, I can also colour in the mythology square. I have not been using this to guide my reading, but it seems to be incidentally getting filled out anyway, so that's pretty great. I also did a couple from my romance little bingo down there as well. I've been colouring in all of the books that I read in a month in the colour that matches the theme of my stats page for that month. I started doing that last year and I really liked it, so I've brought it forward into this journal as well. So let's make all of my March books blue, dabba-dee dabba-die, to match my stats page. And I do actually have a DNF, but I haven't printed a book cover for it, so I'm just going to pencil it in there and we'll come back to that later. This next review is for another book that was curated for me through the BookBox service I've been trying out. This one was actually curated for me for December, but I didn't get to read it until now, and it has some Christmas themes, so that's why we're going kind of cozy on the decoration here. And in this book box, you get a little note each time from the owner telling you why they chose this book for you. And I thought that was really cute, so I included it on my spread. I didn't remember to do that for Elektra, but I have it somewhere. Maybe I can find a way to retroactively add that little card. This book's called You Make My Wish Come True by Rachael, Lippincott and Alyson Derrick. It's a very cute little sapphic YA romance. It's set at Christmas time, it has friends to lovers vibes, it has fake dating, and it is a small town romance as well. So it has the makings of everything that I really love in a book, but unfortunately, it just doesn't kind of measure up to something on the standard of I Kissed Chara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. It was good, I didn't have any trouble finishing it. I actually did this one on audiobook even though I had the print book in my house. Should mention that as well with the other two books from this book box. I just can't read physical paperback books anymore, friends, I'm sorry. I do most of my reading at night when my partner's in bed next to me but sleeping, and so having the Kindle light really helps me, but I actually did try with Elektra and I made it to 29 pages before I went and checked if the library had it, so that's kind of funny. Did this one on audiobook. Caroline is a small town girl who has been kicking along trying to work out why her best friend abandoned her when she moved to Hollywood and made it big as an actress. Arden, meanwhile, has been trying to navigate fame as a teenager, trying to be the person that she feels like Hollywood needs her to be. And she's developed a bit of a reputation for herself as a wild child because she feels like that's what she needs to do to get noticed and get roles. But they want her to be a little bit more small town girl charm. And she's like, well, I grew up in a small town. Let me convince you by fake dating my best friend who I haven't spoken to since I left. In the format of 12 dates in the 12 days of Christmas, which is cute. It's very cute. Look, it was a great palette cleanser after Elektra, but I don't feel like I would revisit this book or necessarily recommend it to everyone, unless it sounds like something that you would like anyway. A little bit forgettable for me, I guess. I'm giving it 3.5 stars, and I did really enjoy putting together the review spread for it with the cozy tartan kind of warm jumper vibes and a little small town with some cute sticky stickers, so that worked out. I had a good time doing that. Did feel a bit weird reading a Christmas book in early March though, so there is that. It's possible I would have enjoyed it more if I had read it in the silly season. We'll never know. Just getting my reading calendar up to date here because a few days have passed. We have some stuff to add, some book covers to place down, and I did make a video recently showing how I'm making my book covers these days. I'm printing them on my home printer and cutting them out with my Cricut Explore 3. So if that's something you're interested in, I'll have that linked up in the cards and down in the description for you in case you want to check it out. Because sprocket paper gets expensive. This next book, oh, I'm so excited to rave at you about this book because I loved it so much. This is the third one from the BookBox subscription that I'm trying out, and I think the value of the BookBox subscription is worth it just for having brought me to this book, if nothing else. And I really think you can tell that I loved this book because I'm going to put so much effort into this review page. I'm going to make it so fun and fancy, and that is because I just want to live in this world a little bit longer. And I can. There are other books in the series, so that's lucky for me. This book is called Forging Silver into Stars by Brigid Kemmerer, and I'm obsessed with it. It's a fantasy romance, but kind of like Elektra, it's also told from 3 separate points of view. And this is the first book in a series that's by the same name, so the series is also called Forging Silver into Stars. But what I didn't realize is that this series takes place in the same world as another series, which I haven't read, called the Cursebreaker series. You definitely don't need to have read the Cursebreaker series first to enjoy this book, but I did notice there was a lot going on that was alluding to things that had happened clearly in these previous books that I hadn't read, and I was a little bit like, I feel like I'm missing out, you know? So I think before I read the second book in this series, I actually want to go back and read that first series and get that context because it sounds very interesting. On my calendar spread, and also later when I add the information, the data to this page, you'll see that it says that I read this book from the 18th to the 25th of March. Honestly, most of that reading happened on the 25th of March. I got into a swing. I didn't do any work that day. I just read this book, like basically from when I woke up to when I went to sleep. And I really don't do that. I don't do that very often at all, so I think that speaks volumes about this book. Within this story, we have 2 separate kingdoms that have been united through marriage. And it's been about 5 years since they were unified, but people haven't really caught on that these two are actually in love, you know, and so they're thinking like, our queen's being trapped, she's being held against her will, maybe she's unwell, we should like revolt, start an uprising. And then you've got people on the other side who are like, we should try to be peaceful, this is the way it is now, let's get on with our lives. What I really loved about this was that there was no evil presence. There was no like, this is obviously the bad guy and you should hate them. It was kind of much more subtle and political and human. Just people making the best choices that they can with the information that's available to them and kind of doing the best they can in the circumstances, which is so relatable. 2 of our points of view are from Callie and Jax, who are both kids who grew up in this small town with not a lot of money. They're just trying to work to make ends meet. Jax also lost his foot in an accident when he was younger, so he is also disabled. And Callie's parents were both killed in things relating to the new king, and so she has plenty of reason to think that maybe he's not a great guy. And then Tycho rides into town. He's our 3rd point of view, and it seems like if you've read the Cursebreaker series, you'll be quite familiar with him already. He is the private courier and a close personal friend of the new king, and so he throws their world into disarray by proving that he's actually kind of just a nice guy. There's romance, there's interpersonal challenges, there's a little bit of spice, but it is YA, so it's kind of gentle spice. Like the door is open, but the descriptions are vague, if you know what I mean. It's LGBTQIA+, but it's also not a cozy fantasy, which I feel like I've read lots of queer cozy fantasies, but it was nice to read one where some stuff happened, you know, stuff was at stake. I was thinking about trying to copy the lettering from the book cover, but I didn't think I would have enough room to leave my absolute rave and yell about how much I liked the book. Hi, Mitsu. I also didn't want to take up too much of the space with my little card that has the recommendation on it from the BookBox service, so I made that card a little tip-in so it can fold out and it has the star rating on that card, or it will have, with my peach rating sticker behind it, and I cut the lettering with my Cricut on some vinyl, which is not a length I'm willing to go to for just any book, but I was too lazy to get out my transfer tape, so I'm just using some like sellotape instead, and I'm taking off some of the sticky on the back of my journal so that it won't destroy destroy the page, hopefully. I used a font called Cinzel Decorative, which isn't exactly the same as the cover font, but it's fantasy fontish enough that I think it does the job pretty well. When you just type with it, it's just an all caps kind of flat sort of a thing, but if you want an extra little flourish on a letter, then you can just use a capital for that one, and suddenly you've got that really pretty R with the flourish underneath, so it's a good one for this, I like it. And I was lucky that I just already had some silver vinyl in my collection, so that worked really well with the title here, and with the physical book cover as well, because of course I do have the physical book, although I read this one on ebook, I got it through the library. Look, transferring vinyl onto paper is a little dicey. I'm very lucky that the only spot where it ripped up was where I wanted to put this V down, and I ended up just using some glue pen to make that one stick and to cover the bit where the book paper tore when I was peeling up the transfer tape. Proceed with caution if you want to do something like this in your journal. Definitely the more you use the tape, the less sticky it is, the better the results are, I find. But on the whole, I'm really happy with how the spread looks in the end, so the struggle was worth it, I think. I also just recently picked up some really fun silver stickers from Stash World, which is a stationery store that's local to me. It's really, really cool, actually. Jessie, who owns the store, quite often finds dead stock from old newsagents that have gone out of business, or just random. She finds stuff in op shops, thrift stores and whatever. And so she finds this stuff that's been on somebody's shelf for years and years and years, and then puts it back into rotation. And these were dead stock stickers, these silver kind of Celtic looking chains. So beautiful. So excited that I got the opportunity to give these a home in my own collection. They paired up so nicely with the Gothic black and silver tape, which is from Cora Crea Crafts. I've also added some of my blue amorphous blobs because they feel kind of magical. They're from a recent Journal Say haul. There's a frame there that's from a PET tape roll that's from London Gifties, and the other stickers are from a PET tape pre-cut roll that's also from Cora Crea Crafts. Oh, I tell you what, when this cat wants his dinner, he is unrelenting. So keen to get stuck into the Cursebreaker series soon and then continue on with this series. There is a second book for Forging Silver into Stars already out, and then the third one I think is slated for release next year. Also, the romance in this book, the yearning, oh, it's so magical and beautiful. I just love it. I love love, so of course I loved it. I'm definitely one of those people who doesn't like to give perfect scores though, so I'm not giving it perfect 5 on the Peach rating system. It has some 4.5s, but the total score we're bringing it to is 24 out of 25, which means it is for sure a 5-star read. I'm so excited about that. This is my second 5-star read of the year. Considering I didn't rate any books 5 stars last year, I think this is progress, and it's all because of my rating system. So it's very interesting to see how a different rating system can affect the outcome. Even if I loved this book beyond belief, if I rated it on the core pile system, I think it probably wouldn't have scored this high, so this feels like an accurate rating for me. Another apology in order, I've misplaced some footage setting up this Anne of Green Gables spread, which is sad because I really want to rant about this book too. I really loved it. I've seen people share clips of Anne with an E online for so long, and I've been like, I'm going to watch that eventually. And then I have in the past couple of months. I watched all 3 seasons and I loved them so much. And when I finished it, Anne of Green Gables was kind of blowing up on Threads for a minute there. Everyone was talking about it, maybe because I think there's an anime adaptation coming out soon. Not sure, but they're all talking about it. And I went, okay, maybe I'll try this book that is a much beloved children's book that I didn't have the chance to come across as a child. I tell you what, little Erin missed out. I think she would have loved Anne. I think I would have really adored this story. I still do as a 37-year-old woman. I'm very glad that I chose to read this now rather than not at all. It is honestly so wild to me that a book that was published in 1908 can be a book that brings me so much joy in 2025. It was so lovely and cute. I gave it 4.4 in my Peach rating system, which is basically 4.5 stars. And I am actually going to continue talking about Anne of Green Gables because I didn't have much footage there to talk over it with you, but we are also moving on to setting up my April tracking spread. Having just watched Anne with an E on Netflix very, very soon before reading the book, there were some differences. I kind of liked the way that they'd adapted things across the 3 seasons, but there was one major difference towards the end of the book that shocked me because it didn't happen in the TV series, and I cried. Oh my god. I really love that Anne is just so unabashedly herself in this story, and it's not she's not like other girls, but it's not in a pick-me, not like other girlsy kind of a way. It's more like she is the original romanticize your life influencer. She just seems to notice all of the beautiful moments and things that happen around her, and she appreciates them and she soaks them in, and the way that she talks about them is so beautiful and poetic. I love her, and I see a lot of tiny baby Erin in Anne, which is kind of cute. Like, not always necessarily understood by the people at school or whatever, but so in her own head and daydreaming about it that it doesn't even really matter. And I think it's safe to say that Anne, our cottagecore queen, had a lot to do with influencing the theme for my April tracker spread here, because look at it. It's like a yellow wallpaper flower print and some cottagecore stickers from Sticky. Like, it's giving Anne of Green Gables. I think Anne would like this spread. So I'm going to flourish my April lettering a little bit more in her honor. As I've been using this gigantic square notebook, this one is 9 inches by 9 inches, it's huge. I actually have a little bit of trouble fitting it into the frame when I'm filming, which is wild. As I've been using it, I've been adapting this spread to be just like a little bit more functional from one month to the next. This is the first month that I didn't feel like I needed to change anything from last month. Like, the March one kind of nailed it. So I've kept the same dimensions and everything, the same layout, the same stats things. The only thing I've changed is that I've moved the decoration from the top and bottom of the spread to kind of a column on the left and right. And my last video was about a super duper tiny A7 size journal, so that is a heck of a size jump. I do have a couple of books that I started reading at the end of March that will carry over into April, so I'm going to put some book covers down on the space that's over on the right side of the calendar, just like I did for the March one. That's just where the book covers are going to go, and if they have a star rating underneath them, that means I finished them that month, and if they don't, that just means that I didn't finish them or I didn't get around to it. Sometimes I think I'm going to read a book and I get so excited about it that I put a book cover on that spread and then I don't get to it and I'm like, well, now you're decorative, I guess. You will get to see how this stats page works in a moment, because we'll go through the March one and fill it out. We'll put all of my reading stats for March on there, but this is what it looks like before it's been used. That same app I mentioned earlier, Storygraph, just logs all of this stuff for me. So at the end of the month, you've got these kind of reading wrap-ups, like a Spotify Wrapped already prepared for you, which is so much fun. And that's on the free version. You don't have to pay for that. I have no idea why I did both the Saturday and Sunday in green when they were supposed to alternate, but it's fine. It's done now and we're just going to go with it. And I wanted to use up all of these stickers because I only need them for this one kind of stretch of theme in this journal. So I'm just going to put some more washi tape down right below the calendar here to give this last one a space to hang out that feels like it's kind of attached. It's part of the layout without it just kind of hanging there on its own. Sometimes it's really tricky to make medium to large size stickers work without kind of eating into your functional space, but these ones, I think because the book is so big, it kind of worked out okay. These are my 2 carryover books that I started in March and I'm still reading in April. Nettle and Bone, which of course is our Page Mages book club read for April. I want to get that one done early in the month so that I can get those discussion questions to my channel members. And also The Glitch by Leanne Slade, which is an Audible original audiobook. Both of those were already represented on the calendar for March, so I thought I'd just have the book covers here as well. It's not out of my way since I'm batch printing those now, so kind of a cute way to just make sure that everything that's on the calendar is also on the page as a book cover. So if you're interested in my thoughts on either of those books, make sure that you tune in for my reading journal video next month. Hit subscribe if you haven't and you want to make sure that you see that. You can even turn on notifications if you like. Or you can become a channel member and jump into my Discord and we can talk about it sooner over there if you like. So reading stats for March. I forgot to fill out the average rating part, so I will just tell you that, but I read 6 books in March with an average rating of 3.92, which is nearly 4, which is pretty good. I read 1,479 pages and listened to 34.35 hours, and the average time it took me to finish a book was a whole week, 7 days. Down the bottom with my little pie charts, I read a 50-50 split this time of audio and ebook. That's unusual for me. I'm usually mostly audio, but I've been really enjoying eyeball reading. 67% of the books I read had more than 500 pages. 33% of them were between 300 and 499 pages. 84% of the books, which means all but one, were sourced through the library, not including the book box thing, and all of them were fiction books. Now that I've got some extra book covers printed, it's time to flip back to the did not finish page and add this one. This is Drop Dead by Lily Chu, whose books I usually love, but I started this one, I listened to the first hour and a half, and I was like, nope, just didn't grab me. And of course, I need to put Forging Silver into stars on my Hall of Fame here. I've also got a larger Anne of Green Gables that I've added here, as well as Seven Summers, which was from last month. So let's have a flip through everything that I read in March. Let me know in the comments down below if you're adding any of these books to your TBR, or maybe next, or reading forecast, whatever you like to call it. Also let me know if you have read any of these and what your thoughts were on them too. But what I really want to know most of all is what was your favourite book that you read in March? Thank you so much for hanging out and journaling and discussing books with me. If you had a good time and you want to keep doing it, there is a link to a playlist on the screen right now for all of my reading journal videos so far this year, and another video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy.